Now, back to that developing story coming out of Doha. Israel's military has just confirmed that it targeted Hamas leaders in Doha about half an hour ago. There are reports coming through of a series of explosions in the Qatari district in the Qatari capital. Of course, the important thing is Hamas's exiled leadership has long been based in Qatar, which has served as a mediator in talks between the Israelis and Hamas for a number of years, even before the latest war began in 2023, rather. Now, for more on this breaking news story, let's cross now to Noga Tanaposky in Jerusalem. Noga, the army has just been briefing journalists. What have they been telling people?
Well, first of all, and remarkably, the IDF briefed Israeli military and diplomatic correspondents that this, in fact, is 100% an Israeli operation and that it was aimed at decapitating Hamas. Hamas has long been divided into what we've traditionally called the military leadership, those on the ground in Gaza, those handling operations, terror attacks against Israel, and the political leadership that seemed to be immune from the Israeli reach, at least for the last 20 years or so, and that have been hosted in Doha. There's a very, very famous video of Hamas's leadership prostrated in prayer of gratitude on October 7th, 2023, in a plush Doha salon. So they have been there a very long time, and the Qataris, asked to explain this, since the war began, have said that they agreed to host this terror group basically to do a favor to the United States and Israel, that it was easier for the US and Israel to monitor Hamas leadership if they were in a known quantity like Qatar. So they described this not so much as support, though Qatar has financially supported Hamas, but as a favor being done to Western allies. Of course, we should add, it's just come through that the Israelis are saying that the United States was advised ahead of time. That's the formulation, and it's important because the U.S. has one of its largest military bases anywhere in Qatar.
We're also hearing, of course, this is a developing story, Noga. You're in Jerusalem, it's happening in Doha, but we're also hearing from Al Jazeera sources that the Hamas leadership were meeting at the time to discuss negotiations about Gaza. Do you have any further information from the IDF about who exactly they were targeting?
I don't have any names from the IDF. I can tell you, as you say, it's a breaking story. I can tell you that a Saudi channel just announced that Khalil al-Haya, who was the top Hamas negotiator during all of this, almost 2 years now, of ceasefire negotiations and hostage for prisoner negotiations, a Saudi channel confirms that he was killed, but we have no confirmation from the IDF. I mean, this could not be a more delicate moment. The President of the United States just proposed a ceasefire deal which would have freed all of Israel's hostages on day one and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and then led to negotiations for an agreed upon settlement for the end of the war in Gaza. This strike does seem to indicate that Israel has chosen a completely different path. Not a negotiated settlement. And in Israel, one of the first reactions, as you can imagine, is the interpretation that this means that the Israeli government officially has abandoned and given up on the hostages. The assumption is that the hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza are unlikely to survive this event.
Again, we're in the early hours of this story, but just give us a sense of how this is, how the Israeli public is going to react to this development, in particular those families of the hostages who are still in Gaza.
I expect that across the board there will be a complicated reaction. I think that for the families of the hostages, the reaction will be horror. I haven't had the chance in the last half hour to speak with any families of hostages, but I believe I know them well enough. they have spent the last few months begging Israel not to engage in any military operation that could endanger their loved ones. In most cases, their children, in some cases, their husbands. I believe that they will consider this exactly that, a military operation that knowingly, intentionally endangers the lives of hostages. Einav Tsangauker, the mother of hostage Matan Tsangauker, I now assume that, having a feeling that maybe something like this was coming, last weekend said openly at the protest in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv that if her son returns in a body bag, she personally will see to it that Prime Minister Netanyahu is charged with murder. That's a quote from her. So I think from the families of hostages and from the majority of Israelis who are very identified with the plight of these families, I think the reaction is going to be perhaps not as positive as the Israeli government would like, and one of horror in certain sectors. But I do want to add, the question of why Israel never attacked Qatar during this war has been in the air for a very long time, and including right-wing military, former military personnel who were asking from the start, from October 7th, why doesn't Israel bombard Qatar? They have been supporting this, they have been funding this, they have been holding us. Just last week, I spoke with one of these right-wing identified people who said that the big mistake in mishandling the war, in his opinion, is that Israel didn't bomb Qatar. I am not sure that this timing is what anybody wanted in Israel. So again, I expect the reaction to be complex and tinged with great fear, but the question of an operation such as this has existed since October 7th.
Noga, just stay with us, and for those of you who are just tuning in, we have a breaking story where Israel has confirmed that it's carried out a series of targeted attacks on the Hamas leadership based in Qatar. Noga, coming back to this sort of very complicated relationship that Hamas has with its Qatari hosts. I mean, Hamas officials have been in exile in Doha for quite some time, haven't they?
Yes, absolutely. For almost, I would say, 16, 17 years. Almost since the moment that Hamas perpetrated a coup d'etat in Gaza in 2007, its leadership was split into the military leadership leading operations against Israel from Gaza. These are all of the rockets launched, all of the missiles launched, and terror attacks planned in Gaza and planned in the West Bank. That was considered the military leadership, the military branch of Hamas. And sort of immune from Israel was the political leadership in Doha, by and large in Doha. And ever since one botched attack against Ismail Haniyeh in Jordan many years ago now, 2 decades ago, Israel has taken a step back from attacking these leaders who are considered more of the international, of the kind of diplomatic front of Hamas. But of course, they are no less connected to Hamas's undertakings than anybody else. And it's just a few days ago, the Israeli defense minister, in one of his many bombastic statements, said that no one was immune. No Hamas leader should consider himself immune. And it now appears that this is what he was alluding to.